You're live.
Okay. Okay.
Go.
All right, it's 10:02 a.m. today on October 2nd, 2024. I'll call to order this meeting of the Grand County Budget Advisory Board. Those board members in attendance include Winfield, Wojtek, Hackwell, Vowles, Throgmorton. Kaufman is online and Kevin Walker is currently absent to see if he joins us. This looks like Walker is attempting to join virtually, so I'm assuming that we'll get him online here virtually in a moment. I'll jump right into action items. For the first and only item we have are the September 25th approval of the Budget Advisory Board minutes. The draft, which are displayed on the agenda packet. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So many.
A motion by Winfield, a second by Hackwell. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Walker
Aye.
absent. Thank you, treasurer. Sorry. Jump the gun a little bit. So we'll jump right ahead to presentations and discussion, and I'll hand it over to Stephen Vowles here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Today's meeting will be a little bit shorter. We're going to have three presentations on the agenda. The Atlas Fund, Designated Funds, and Debt Service. And we'll start that. But just to level set on the process here, I just like to do at the beginning of each meeting. You can see the timeline there where Jessica, we worked with you and other department heads for the last month or two to come up with estimated budgets and proposed budgets. And now we are going through this period of September, October to come up with the tentative budget. So, for example, Jessica has come with the proposed budget for the Atlas Fund, and we'll discuss that here today. And the purpose of this meeting is not to approve or deny anything. It's just to review the budget, to look for any complexities, considerations, concern issues. So when this budgetary process gets closer to November 1, when we should recommend a budget for commission review, we can, put everything together and balance the budget. Okay, so let's open up Jessica's budget, and Jessica, Jenny Beth and I met earlier this week to discuss your budget. And Jessica, I'm going to just turn it over to you to kind of describe this, but I've highlighted anything on here and you've made a lot of good notes. So maybe you could just give us the 2-minute introduction of what the Atlas Fund is and how it's funded and what are your core expenditures, and then we'll go through the lines.
Thank you, members of the Budget Advisory Board, for coming to listen to my proposal. This proposal is actually incredibly fluid. My position, as it stands right now, is funded by a 5-year grant that is provided through the DOE, as well as my entire position in its entirety was created through this grant program, through federal funding that is lobbied every single year with the legislature. And the only part of my position that is actually funded by Grand County is the oil and the oil inspector position. And that one is technically paid through I don't know if it's a tax or if it's just like a cast off of processed water that is brought out to the OWL facility that is located at Danish Flats. So for every drum, we get a percentage of that drum that's dropped off, and that pays for the oil position. So technically, the only part that Gregg County pays for is the support and the basics such as FICA and workman's comp, things that are afforded to a part-time position. So I know it looks like a wild increase because my position is actually only funded until February 5th of 2025. And I've spoken at length with the DOE, and they have signaled, not outright because it is the DOE and they do not outright state things to you, that they are not inclined to push another 5-year funding period for this position, because this is not something that is federally mandated by the DOE. This is not something that the DOE pushed forward. This was a position that Grand County wanted at the beginning of this process through the project, through the creation of the steering committee and subsequently my position. So I've put it in here that if you want this position to continue as a liaison between the DOE and the county as we get closer to closure and as we start post-closure, which will be your groundwater remediation, infrastructure on site remediation, land transfer, that sort of thing. So 2025 to 2030, which is the period that they anticipate it being done. It would be something that would need to fall under Grand County, whether that be the general fund, I'm not quite sure. So that's why there's essentially an entire novel of notes. Because I had full-time numbers, I had part-time numbers, I tried to anticipate COLA. I don't know what my benefits would be, so that's why those numbers are different. I did originally have a contingency line, a 2% contingency, but that was just something that was factored into the grant previously. So again, fluid, lots of notes, huge increases because of just one-off things that I've actually been paying for out of pocket, such as Zoom, Adobe. My personal vehicle is actually utilized for all the transportation, so that's why there's massive percentage increases on the ask.
No, go ahead.
I have several questions,
Sure.
and I'll start right off with your personal vehicle should be covered with your use there. We shouldn't be taking advantage of your.
I do get mileage reimbursement. I had to kind of ask for that one at first. Because when we changed the fleet process, every time I come in, they're like, there's not a vehicle.
Right, and I think we're actually still working on. You know, we need to take care of that utility funding, the DOE or Grand County. My question would be along the wages. Do you receive benefits? Because I believe you were, in the remainder of your time, you work for the sanitation. Okay, so you are getting benefits, it's just on the Grand County side already, and if this position is not funded, and Grand County chooses to not continue, will you then go full time at the sanitation district? You are full time, so doesn't this cover half of your salary?
It's based on the 1040 number, but secondary funding dependent on as it gets on my hours being free and the time of the one of the my hours, it's more I don't work.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but a couple of minutes ago the audio went really bad, soft.
I know one second, you lost our audio.
Let me just quickly accept this.
Oh, ow.
There we go. There we go. that was likely me. Okay, Kevin, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Our echo just, or our owl disconnected somehow.
So,
Okay, do you remember what you were talking about your part-time
The hours.
status?
Yeah,
So just real quick for clarification, then, you are paid full-time at the transfer station and then a half-time again at the DOE, or how?
it's through the grant is how I'm paid through Gray County. I'm employed by Grant County, but I'm paid by the grant.
Okay, so it just supplements your income. You're
Yes.
not working a job and a half.
It does supplement my income, yes, because as we all know, living in Moab is very expensive.
Sure. Okay, I mean, that's what I was just looking for, with some clarification there. Steve.
Mhm. Well, the reason I put the full-time in there is because I know as we get closer to closure, it's gonna be more demanding in that position, probably may need to transition into a full-time. I'm trying to be like very fluid into this because we really don't know how it's going to look as we get closer. And if I'm being honest, this is more geared to what I went to school for. I'm a geologist by trade, and I kind of have more of a passion for this position.
Sure.
Not anything to say to my current job, but this is more of what I want to do. So that's why I'm leaving that open.
I mean, we'll throw in, Jessica had originally put in the salary here of full-time.
Yeah, but that's why I've got the numbers.
But we
for-
backed it off to halftime, but just talking to other people, it just didn't look like the right time to go
Mhm.
full-time. But anyway, so presently it still shows you at your current level.
With just I believe the COLA adjustment with a potential step increase.
Yeah.
So, but I do have my current rate right there, which is the grade 12 step 2.
So just to jump through this, the salary, and that's just your halftime salary. $6,000 was the travel, and you'd mentioned this, the use of your personal vehicle, the mileage,
Yeah, this-
everything like that.
For all the trips that I'm required to take, plus some unexpected trips, like right here, this would be an unexpected trip. And then I factored in a little bit of R&M or repair and maintenance, oil changes, tires, stuff like that, just unexpected maintenance I would need to make on my vehicle due to these. Because the Danish Flats facility is out there
Mhm.
and you need 4-wheel drive to get out there, especially in the winter months. So I have to put slightly bigger tires on.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So you said that would be likely to expire after this current 5-year period because the DOE wouldn't, is likely not interested in continuing to fund it.
Mhm.
Is there still an expectation by the DOE that Grand County would continue to support this role moving forward because there's still work to be done? Or would there be negative consequences if Grand County were to decide to leave it vacant? And that's accessory to another question I have to follow up to that.
Again, DOE is not really gonna be like super direct in their responses. They've kind of just said, this position was something that Grand County wanted. We support it, we recognize it, but this is not something that we ourselves would have created.
Okay.
So like they like working with me, they
Sure.
signaled the
I'm sure they did.
appreciation, but they're like, you wanted this, you should pay for it.
Yeah, and it's time invested in it up to this date. The next question I had is there was a commission meeting item that came up yesterday regarding Atlas Park. And a sort of an MOU with the city
Yes.
and a potential city position that would be created. And I recognize that that potential position might not be exactly what, might not be the same position that we're actually talking about.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering if you've been involved in those conversations and what that looks like. Could it be rolled into that conversation?
I was going there also.
So I attended the very first meeting when this discussion first came up of this position and moving forward. I was not involved in the creation of this position. I don't know if it's been filled. I wasn't involved with any of it, and I can safely say that the DOE was not either.
And the
the
What's being
MOU
contemplated.
or the.
Okay,
project
because I don't think anything's been posted. I think details are still being sorted out,
Mhm,
as far as
yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah, I can't really speak to it because I wasn't involved.
Okay. Got
So Jessica, you and I were talking the other day, so I think, or actually before, the first question is the total 53,000. How much of that is grant funded? Through, and it's,
Almost
but
all of it isn't grant.
through February of 2025 or
Mhm.
only, and so there's still.
Only
a
till
question?
February 5th of 2025.
All right, so then the question is, to us, Grand County, is it worth having the liaison position filled for 2025 for about $50,000?
I mean, I will note that I am going to attempt to reapply for this grant. I'm still moving forward. I'm gathering all the documents and creating a timeline. I'm still going to move forward in applying for it, but just giving the county the heads up that if the DOE does decide, no, I'm gone February 5th, like I'm no longer funded. Or rather, the county will no longer be reimbursed for my position.
Right.
So it's kind of like,
So. I have another thought on this, Gabe, and maybe this isn't the place to do it, but at some point. We have to either do something through a workshop with the commissioners or whatever to decide, do we want this position moving forward? If as she says, DOE says we're done.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think that decision should be made here, and I'm not trying to make it here, but I do think that we want to be proactive and not wait until this, you said the 5th of February?
February 5th, I
Yeah,
believe, is
so-
the day.
I just think we need to, moving forward, think about what we want to do there.
So. I guess I'm confused a little bit.
It is a very confusing position.
So the 41,000, you're asking for the county to cover that portion of it. That gets, but you don't know if you're gonna have funding in February.
Mhm.
So but the 41,000 is gonna cover it until February, or is that all?
No,
next
that's,
year?
that's all next year.
And so if you don't get funding for the DOE, then you're basically getting 41,000 for the year.
It would technically, but it would be, my hope is that, it would actually have Grant County put a lens on this position and further develop it, especially how they want to do with closure, because closure will, of the pile, like the pile will be done, or the removal of the pile will be done in
So-
2025, and that's going to change my role dramatically.
Right, so but that's why you put the full-time amount in there is the 83,000. My glasses on, I can't see.
I wanted to give the full gambit of all the numbers.
So, I mean, this could, again, we're talking about positions in a further meeting with Budget Advisory Board. My opinion would be is, why don't you just discuss the position as is in that, pushing the full amount forward? And then that way it's essentially approved, but if it's funded through the DOE as well again next year, then you're only paying the 41,000, but you can still discuss the position as moving forward, because the commission's got to vote on the positions. All we are is an advisory for that position. So after the budget wise, so in my opinion, why shortchange yourself with 41,000, and then we have to come back in and amend it again next year if you guys decide to keep the position again next year and then add the additional 41,000, whatever again.
I think it was the sticker shock.
I squeezed her on that dollar. I said, like,
Well, do you understand what I'm trying to say is like,
Yeah.
we're going through the positions for Budget Advisory Board on the position.
yeah,
Well, we don't even know if we're gonna get funding for it next year. Why not do that? Then if you get the funding for it, then I would rather amend the budget to take money back and put it back into the general fund than amend the budget to add money to a position when we've already approved the position. Yeah.
well, there's a lot of fluid. There's a lot of fluidity to this. And I think one is the DOE grant.
Mhm.
Does that come in, yes or no? Two, is it worth, or is it valuable to Grant County to have a liaison position, even if we fund it ourselves? Three, what shape is this whole future state of the Atlas?
What I'm trying to say is with Budget Advisory Board here in a couple of weeks or whenever it is, we're all gonna sit down and talk about positions
Yep.
that we're going to fund and push
Yep.
forward to the commission to address. So I mean, we're basically gonna be doing this, I mean, because we don't know if a position is essentially
Right.
going to exist
Yeah.
next year, and that's the discussion that you guys are wanting to have.
Yeah.
Why not push it on the personnel request essentially, because it's a position request? And then have the county commission discuss it in a meeting when they discuss all the positions anyways.
What are your thoughts, Gabe?
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just making it worse.
It almost seems like this is, yeah,
This
it's,
is a much larger discussion.
this is a new position and reclassification conversation as much as it is a budgeting question. And I don't mind having a full-time scenario and a part-time scenario loaded up and ready to go, depending on how and just being ready to input either of those budgets in, depending on how the commission wants to proceed.
That's probably a good idea, having both scenarios when we get there.
That's why I
Kind of
wanted to
like what
present
you
both
have.
of them.
That's why I'm saying, because we're gonna discuss reclassifications or new positions here at the end of this month anyways. And push them to the commission to discuss.
When will we know about the DOE grant?
I don't have a timeline for approval, to be completely honest. I was not,
Like before
Here.
November or after November?
It's federal.
it's federal and based on the timeline from the last reiteration, I wasn't in this position when that happened and I have absolutely no background, so I'm kind of flying blind here. It looks like everything was submitted in December. And then I believe the review process is up until that February, so I think it's like February, March. Again, I'm still.
Okay,
doing
okay, so when we're doing the budgeting, we will not know whether there are
No,
federal
you
funds
won't know in
available.
time, no.
Okay, so I agree with what Shane and Bill said. I think you should, draft a good paragraph or two about, the pros and cons of extending the position, and then we throw it in with all the other position requests. So,
I mean, I think the biggest pro is having that position would allow us to keep our relationship with the DOE, because we have a really good relationship with the DOE via the steering committee. And it would allow us to continue to have that tether. So when that land transfer process does happen, we have that, what's the term I'm looking for? Vested. We have that vested interest, and we've got that vested relationship with the DOE, which would make the transition a little bit easier.
Well, that's why I agree with you 100%. I think you should apply for the grant. We should always find
Oh, yeah.
sources of funding. And I don't think you should get rid of that relationship. But the problem is we don't even find out if we're getting the funding until next year.
Mhm.
But we're budgeting for half and hoping that we get the other half next year. And what if we don't get that other half next year? Then we get to decide whether you don't have a job at that point, or we're throwing another 41,000 next year. I mean, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I would rather decide in this budget cycle whether you're gonna continue, in my opinion, would be the full amount, and then you guys discuss it. And then if it is approved by the commission and everybody on the funding side this year, then you apply for the grant, you get the grant hopefully. And then you take that, you amend the budget to take that 41,000 that you allotted for a full-time salary out of the general fund or wherever you guys got it. And then put that back into the general fund. It's always better to put money back into the fund. Re-amend next year and take more out, in my opinion, but that's.
No, I think that would be good.
I have a question here, and I don't know who could answer it, but the future state of the Atlas property, is that gonna be county or city property or jointly?
We had some of that discussion last night.
Yeah.
Because we are kind of handing over the running of the committee moving forward to the city. And my concern was that might cause some problems, but they assured me that the MOU could be done away with if we needed to. But in my estimation of how it would happen is that it's gonna flow through the county eventually. I don't see them bypassing the county and flowing to the city, but it could flow to both of us according to the attorney, so it's up in the air a little bit.
Okay. All right, well, there's a lot of discussion. No, we don't need to
And we're
beat this
getting
horse to death.
outside of her.
I think we understand the budget and the considerations. I think this will be just a classic discussion with our board and the commissioners when it comes time for, the tentative budget recommendation.
I'm
Agreed.
always happy to like answer questions y'all might have outside of this. I know it's if this, if that, if not A, then B, and somewhere over here. There's a lot of considerations.
Well, I think we have our plan.
Okay.
I mean, apply for the grant, we'll look at the budget and decide how much the county can contribute through the next year, and just keep doing the good job you're doing today.
Yeah, I'll just, like I said, I tried to provide 3 different scenarios. Full-time, part-time, funded by the
Yeah.
grant, so.
Yeah, thanks
If
for
you're
putting
not
so much
pursuing-
work into that and preparing this for the commission consideration. And it's clear that you care a lot about the position, so appreciate that.
Yeah, I really like this position and I don't want it to go away because I believe it would be beneficial for us to have a stake in that because it could provide a huge economic boom to us.
It's exciting.
We'll see.
All right, Jessica, you're free to go.
Here you go. Go back to the chaos of my other option. You have a good day.
Okay, well, the next 2 presentations it's really us. The designated funds and the debt service from the building authorization. They're really not a department head for that. I looked to Gabe actually to answer a lot of questions here. I put these together, but just from research and looking up our accounting system, so I really don't have a lot of history. All right, so let's do designated funds. In fact, before we do that, Dave, maybe you can give us just the 30-second description of what designated funds is.
Yeah, it's mainly a place where you'll see donations as a line description that we're seeing in this. As well as some other restricted funds that don't necessarily, that are maybe associated with departments in the general fund, but funds that definitely don't belong in the general fund because of their restricted nature. And they don't otherwise have a separate fund associated with them. For example, the opioid settlement revenue that's in relation to the one Utah opioid settlement and disbursements that we receive and distribute by a commission direction to local organizations to address the opioid crisis. And we're not going to create a fund just for that revenue source, nor do we want to put it in the general fund. So designated funds is kind of the place where we put some of these disparate things. As you can see, we have a lot of inactive lines, so we add to it. But you know, for this purpose, but there's only so many of them that are really active ongoing. But that's the best way to put it. Poster sales, that's kind of an odd one in there. There's posters out in the lobby that are sold by the assessor's office. And so it was decided at some point by a predecessor that we would keep those, the revenues associated with those sales very restricted to use for specific things like employee appreciation and things of that nature, that it was decided would be better off not spending sort of taxpayer dollars per se on supporting. So just kind of a little bit of a sort of a cake and ice cream fund from those poster sales. As you can see, it's not a lot of money, so I don't want to use that kind of terminology to cause alarm. But yeah, that's kind of a good sum up.
And I think also there is an in and out to both this fund. So if there's an opioid revenue or a fee income or intake, there's also an opposing or an outlet. Just a fund, whatever. All right, so I didn't highlight anything here as a neutral or a gain or a loss because it's just kind of variable. So I'll just go through these and you guys jump out if you have any questions. The opioid, this is the amount that's going to come in this year.
It's estimated.
Estimated, yeah. And these are all estimated. The search and rescue did donations. I just took the actuals to date, ending 9 months, so divided it by 0.75 to figure out that's what will be a year. Same on the HOSTA special donations. We haven't estimated some of those inactive accounts, even though I imagine anything could probably bring some revenue in. Senior citizens, this is lunches or fees on lunches, and this is just an estimate of what 12 months will be like based on actual through August. Just scrolling down here, firework donation, we bring in 27,000 and spend 27,000 for the fireworks show. Again, an estimate here of the current balance of the OSTA donation fund. Now we're down to the expenditure, so this is just the opioid payment, which we pay out, I forget who we pay, the health department or something for that.
USARA and the hospital, I
Yeah.
think we split it. It's not an even split, but
Oh, yeah.
something between the two of them.
Yeah. And so down here, it's just gonna be how we're gonna spend those funds. Again, this is, you know, and to be honest, I don't remember how this was calculated here. Oh, no, that's so sorry, that's just the equivalent. The same, the senior center bringing in this amount, it's the same amount going out. All right, so there's really not much else to say here, other than just we're trying to, and the balance here of 1847, we would just like true that up once we were done, but just in and out. Any questions? All right. Let's go to the debt service for any of the, and Gabe, maybe you can give us a 30-second description of this fund.
So the key word here for this fund is the Municipal Building Authority, which is a body that's been set up by the commission. Where it's an avenue through which other entities and the county itself can apply for certain funding opportunities and financing avenues, including the Community Impact Board, mainly the Community Impact Board, but it's also used in other for other models as well. And it's sort of a statutorily set up body for that kind of activity. And there are sort of more favorable terms available and so on and so forth. And I think all of the contracts, you know, when we're involved with some of these debts that are on the books, such as the health department or EMS, you know, I think that I don't think that means that the county is necessarily guaranteeing these loans or the municipal building. I think all the contracts are in place such that those entities are, you know, sort of, you know, appropriately on the hook for the debt that they've entered into. But it does appear on our fund, in our fund portfolio. And we track it appropriately, and it works pretty well, and most of the payments, it's fairly easy. It's not too onerous on our administration or my office to track. Typically, these debt payments are done once annually, so it's not like a monthly payment and so on and so forth. And it's just a matter of making sure we stay in good contact with these other entities as it goes along.
So I'll just scroll through this. That's the debt payment for the county jail remodel. Paid like I said, annually. These are balances. These were CIB incomes for the Jackson Street, or the four of these together. And we are considering this balance in the other stormwater we've been in. As a side note, we may not spend it on Jackson Street. Dan Stenza is coming up with another inventory, which I think you guys are looking at.
What does the MBA designate? What does that mean?
Municipal Building Authority.
Okay. And then, do you know if any of those funds from CIB happen to be restricted to Jackson Street? Or if they need to be spent there, or that was fluid, it could be used wherever?
We can supply those loan documents to, I would imagine that it is quite specific to Jackson Street. But that's just that's not based on.
I'd be
I've
curious.
heard Dan say that it would be restricted once it was approved by CIB.
Oh, so
If
this
hasn't
is
officially been
not,
approved. Yeah.
we haven't received this.
Good for.
Correct. So what it's like, it's a strange thing. So these top four lines that are highlighted right now, we budget them as revenue because it's money that the CIB still has earmarked for these projects.
Oh.
In the course of the year, if we hack away at that project and pay contractors, we go ahead and put that in as an expense. And then when we get reimbursed by the CIB, we enter it in here as revenue.
Oh, okay, so it is a previous request we made to CIB that was approved.
Yeah, and that represents the amount of funds that is basically that the CIB is still holding available for this project.
Now I understand. Thank you.
CIB for airport terminal and runway. I'm just gonna scroll through these and you guys can ask, see if you have any questions here. Again, this EMS building loan, it is just a pass through, they pay us, you know, and to make that payment on their behalf. Actually, I still have a question here, Gabe, I didn't really find out about. I couldn't find any loan documentation on this one here, so this may come out, but I just kept the same budget from last year, but there were no actuals in this, so maybe that doesn't apply, but. You know, we're still kind of working through this.
If you could do me a favor and just ping me. So
That
I
account
can
number.
make sure to respond to helping you find that documentation. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be important too with the upcoming annexation, if we find out if there's something outstanding there.
Yeah. And these are all just annual payments that we make on behalf of those revenues that, you know, are coming in. Just the debt payments for all of them. And I found all of these in our accounting system, so all these payments were made, except for the exception of that one, which I'll follow up with. So there we are, just ins and outs, and in fact, that's probably, given that we're about 36,000 off that 25,000, that might be a big chunk of that balance, but anyway, I'll follow up with that. Anyway, really not much to look at here, in and out on debt payments. So, existing ones, with one action to follow up. Any
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I don't think that there are any major lingering concerns or issues. With that one, it all seems like a pretty smooth pass through. I think that that's a good question regarding that CIP funding and it's the potential to pivot there if there's any.
Yeah, no, that's a good follow-up as well. Because the prevailing wisdom from the planning and zoning is that we could redirect that fund, but we should really follow up, make sure that's a fair assumption. Okay, that's really a small agenda today, and actually it would just happen to be from people's schedules, so we're gonna have some other busy Wednesdays, but today was just a lot of people unavailable.
All right.
Okay,
That's
that's
all.
it.
Any other future considerations anyone wants to note at this moment?
The only thing I have, and I was gonna drop it off with Steve, is when at the UAC conference, I received information on fleet fundings. I know that it's kind of a mixed bag with the sheriff's department, whatever, but I was gonna give you this, Steve. I don't know if it's
Okay.
worth looking into. We've discussed that a little bit in the past.
Perhaps specific to law enforcement or?
No, this is for the county-wide, but
Okay.
I know that there was some issues with the sheriff's office. I think you brought them up before where they had problems with somebody and that's why we ended up in Enterprise. And I'm not trying to kick Enterprise to the side, but if there's a savings to the county, if it's substantial, and that's why I wanted to just give it to you.
And I think Stephen's just got a meeting coming up with the sheriff and Mike and the sheriff, chief deputy and Shan, so that could be a good timing on that. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Okay, it's 10:41. This meeting of Budget Advisory Board is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.